In the previous video, I had laid out this 3-piece tapering 90-degree elbow going from 5-inch to 3-inch, and we put it on center for that example, and I used the centerline method in order to develop the pattern. In this example now that I'm going to do, I'm going to show you the advantage of using the Hyland Swing. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take it off center. So I'm going to have it drop from this end to this end by 1.5 inches. We're going to go down 1.5 inches from this end to this end. And by doing that, I can no longer use the centerline method because I don't have a common center now between this end and this end. So this is where the Hyland Swing really has an advantage, especially with the shortcut method, because the only other way that I could do it now is with the principal method, where I would actually have to have a full plan view and a full elevation view. And if you remember from a video that I done showing the principal method with the squared around, the rule is we take the foreshortened length from the plan and we triangulate it against its rise in elevation. So it's a fair amount of work in order to do it that way. And understanding this simplified method using the Hyland Swing, especially when now I've got it dropping back that 1.5 inches, is definitely an advantage. So let's get started here. The first thing that we're going to do is identify our points. And up here, we're going to identify them with letters. And the reason that we use letters up here as opposed to the numbers is because it helps me to distinguish when I'm going from the bottom of my fitting to the top of my fitting. It also saves me from getting confused between the numbers if I have them exactly the same. So now that I've got these points identified, we can now start and identify our points here. So the first thing we're going to do is determine where we're going to put our seam. So in our example that we're going to be doing, I'm going to put the seam in the throat for all 3 pieces. So that means then that when I do the stretch out for this, which I've done ahead of time just to save a little bit of time, we can identify these points. And now we can do the same thing up there. We're going to start off here with A and back to A. So we've identified those points. And like I said, I took the liberty to draw this ahead of time just to save a bit of time as far as our pattern development is concerned, because what we're really interested in is what that Hyland Swing is actually going to be doing for me when I go to develop this pattern. So I've got all the information that I need here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create that modified plan for the Hyland Swing. It doesn't matter where I put that. I can put it anywhere I want. That's the advantage of using a Hyland Swing. I can put it up here. I could put it down here. I could put it anywhere I want that's going to work out effectively for me in developing this stretch out. So I'm going to place it here. We're going to mark our 5-inch on here. And we're going to draw that in. And now what we're going to do is identify those points. So as you remember, when we take this fitting and we turn it up like this, we want to see what the rotation of these numbers are going to be up in this modified plan. The easiest way to do that is whatever's on the outside down here will go to the center here. And then whatever's in the center is going to go to the outside. It doesn't matter which one I call 4, and it doesn't matter which one I call 10. That's up to me. And then I plug in the rest of the numbers. And now what we want to do is we want to draw in this portion of my modified plan to show what it looks like up here. So as we said, we're going down from this end to this end by 1.5 inches. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark on here my 1.5 inches. And then I'm going to find the center of my 3-inch. And we're going to draw in that half plan here. And by doing that, what that is going to show me as I start to work through the development of this piece is how much these lines are falling back or changing as I go from one to the other. So the next thing I want to do is identify these points. So we take what's on the outside and we put it to the center. And we take the center and we decide where we want to put it. And plug in the rest of the letters. And now we have all our points identified. Now what we can do is get started with the development of our pattern. So over here, we're going to start off with a line. And we're going to start off with a point on that line, because that's all we have right now as far as our two knowns. Because we need two knowns in order to find the third. So I've got my line and I've got my point on the line. So what this line here is representing is this distance here from 7 to G. Now when we did this with the center line method, we said one of the advantages that we have is that if it's on center, this is always a true length. But in this example, it is not a true length, because as you can see here, they do not share the same common center line. There's an offset here that exists, which no longer makes this a true length. So we have to find that true length. So what we're going to do is we're going to develop off of this view a line that comes out here. And it doesn't matter if I project those lines from this plan or this plan, it's going to be the same. It's just the difference that we're actually looking for. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the foreshortened length and we're going to start off here and we're going to identify this point down here as 7. And what we're going to do is we're going to go from 7 to find G. So I take the foreshortened length. I'm going to put it out on line 7. And we're going to identify it as 7 to find G. And now, in order to find its true length, I want to know how far that line is going back so I can develop it as a true length. So when I look at this one right here, there's G. There's the amount that is actually falling back. So when I take this distance from here to here, that now gives me the true length for line 7, G. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go from G down to 6 and 8. So we're going to take that distance. We're going to draw the line in here. And as you can see, I started off with a solid line, and now I put a dash line in here. So creating a pattern that you're going to use as far as going from the top to the bottom and the bottom to the top also helps keep it straight in your mind as to which one you're going to, and so you don't get confused as you're going through the pattern. The other way to do it is to put a little arrow on here. You can definitely do that. Same thing on here, indicating that you've gone from the bottom to the top, and then this one, the top to the bottom. But in my example, I'm going to use solid lines when I go from the bottom to the top, and I'm going to use a dash line when I go from the top to the bottom. So now what we're doing, we have G, we want to go down and find either 6 or 8. Now we want to develop this pattern to the inside. So when I take a look in this direction, I can see that 6 is on my right and 8 is on my left. So that means when I go to start over here, 8 should be on my left and 6 should be on my right. Now, because this is offsetting, the one side is not going to be the same as the other. So we want to start with one side first. So let's start with 8. So I'm going to go 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and back to 1. when I do this. So circling them sometimes helps too in identifying the pattern that we're taking through here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go from G down to 8. We're going to take the distance from G to 8. So what I'm looking for now is line 8 down here. So there it is right there. So I'm going to extend this line out. And I might as well extend this line out and this line as well, because we're working off of this side or this half of our fitting. I'm going to take the distance from G to 8. I'm going to put it out on line 8, and I'm going to identify it as G to find 8. And then I look for G, and there's 8. So there's the difference that we're triangulating over. So we're going to go from G to 8, find the true length, and go from G, scribe the arc. And then the reason that I developed the collars is because we need to take it from the miter line side of the collar in order to assure that I'm getting the correct stretch out length for this end of the fitting. And that's going to give me 8. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go from 8 to F and H. But which one is it? Is it F or is it H? Well, the easiest way to distinguish that is I'm going to be working on this half of the fitting. So I'm looking for whatever one is still referenced on this side over here, which looks like it's H. So H is on this side, whereas F will be on this side. So H is over here, F is going to be over here. So we're going to be using H, I, J, K, L, and then obviously back to A. We're going to take the distance from 8 to H. I'm going to put it out on line 8. And I'm going to identify it as 8 to find H. And there's the difference that I'm triangulating over. So I'm going from 8. And now we're going to go from 8 up here. Then I'm going to take the distance off the miter line side of the collar from G to H. And now we're going to go from H down to 9. So I take the foreshortened length of H, 9. I put it out on line 9. I'm going to identify it as H to find 9. There's H, so that represents the amount of fall that this line is going to see. So we're going to triangulate over that length, and then we're going to go from H. Then we're going to go from 9 to I. We're going to take the foreshortened length of 9 to find I. So I'm going to put that back out on line 9. I'm going to identify it as 9 to find I. I look for I. There's the amount of fall that it's actually going to see right there. So I'm going to go from I to find the true length. And now we're going to go from 9 up to find I. Then we're going to go from I down to find 10. So we take the foreshortened length of I10. I put it out on line 10. I identify it as I to find 10. And there's the difference. There's I. There's the difference that we see. So we're going to triangulate that. And we're going to go from I and scribe the arc. So then we're going to go from 10 up to J. So we're going to put that out on line 10. We're going to identify it as 10 to find J. There's J right there. So that shows me the difference. So I'm going to go from J to find the true length. And we'll go from 10 and scribe the arc. Then we're going to go from J down to 11. You see us zigzagging through the fitting. That's why having solid lines and dashed lines, identifying the numbers and letters becomes particularly important so that we know exactly where we're going and we can stay on track as we work through the fitting. So we're going from J down to 11. So I'm going to put that on line 11. We're going to identify it as J to find 11. Again, there's J, and now there's 11. You can see the difference. We're going to go from J to that line. Then we're going to go from 11 up to K. So we're going to take the distance from 11 to K. I'm going to put it on line 11. So it's 11 to find K. There's where K is right there. So we're going to go from K to find the true length. So now we're going to go from 11 to find K. Then we're going to go from K down to 12. We take the foreshortened length. We're going down to 12. So I look for line 12. It's right here. So now we're going to go from K down to 12. Again, I'm looking for the difference. So there's the amount of difference I see right there. It's not very much. So we're going to take that distance and we'll go from K. Then we're going to go from 12 to L. We're going to take that foreshortened length. I'm going to put it on line 12. We're going to identify it as 12 to find L. So now we're going to take the difference that we see going from 12 to L. So there's the difference that we're going to see right there. And we're going to go from 12. Now we're going to go from L down to 1. So we take that foreshortened length of L1. I'm going to put it out on line 1. Identify it as L to find 1. There's the difference that I see right there. So I've got L, and we're going to 1. Now we're going to go from 1 up to A. So we're going to take that distance from 1 to A. I'm going to put it out on line 1. We're going to identify it as 1 to find A. There's A right there. So that's the difference that I'm going to see. And that's going to give me A. So that is going to complete this half of the pattern. Again, we zigzagged all our way through here. This line here becomes very important to understand that we're taking them from here. We didn't go back to here and take the distances. These are showing me the differences. So this line is my working line. In order to establish those differences between those points, it's very important to remember we're always working off of this line. That's why we projected these back and these ones in so that we could work off of there. Now what we want to do is go over to the other side. So I already have 7 and G. Now we're going to start the whole sequence again, but now we're going to be working on this side. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the distance from G, now going back down this way, and now we're going to 6, because now we're on this side. So we're going 6, 5, 4, and then back to 1. Sometimes using colored markers makes it a lot easier to identify these. There's nothing wrong with that. We do that in the shop as well. We'll use different markers. If the layout is a complicated one where we're starting to see a lot of different lines, so we can do the exact same thing here. Sometimes that helps to distinguish when we're working from one side to the other. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the foreshortened length from G to 6. So I'm going to take the foreshortened length, G6. I'm going to put it out on line 6. I'm going to identify it as G, define 6. And now I'm looking for the difference. So here's line 6. There's G. So I know I'm going from here to here as far as a difference is concerned. So we're going to take that now to develop it as a true length. And we're going to go from G. Then I'm going to go from 6 up to, in this case now, we're working on this side, so we're dealing with F and obviously back to A. So we're going to take that distance. We're going to go from 6 up to F. I'm going to put it out on line 6. I'm going to identify it as 6 to find F. Now I'm looking for the difference. As you see, it's very, very little there, almost a true length. We're going to take that and we're going to go from 6 and describe the arc. And now we're going to go from F down to 5. So we're going to take the foreshortened length, F to 5. I'm going to put it out on line 5. I'm going to identify it as F to find 5. Now I'm looking for the difference. So that shows me the difference right there. I'm going from F to 5. And now we're going to go from 5 up to E. Put it out on line 5. We look for E. There's the difference that we see. Then we're going to go from E down here to 4. So we're going to take that foreshortened length of E4. We're going to put it out on line 4. We're going to identify it as E4. Now I'm looking for the difference. I see it right there. Now we're going to go from 4 up to D. We're going to take the foreshortened length. We're going to put it out on line 4. We're going to identify it as 4 to find D. There's D right there. So we're going to take that distance and we're going to go from 4 to find D. Then we're going to go from D down to find 3. I'll put it out on line 3. Again, we're going from D to find 3. And as you can see, very little difference here. There's D right there. Very little difference. We're going to go from D to 3. Then we're going to go from 3 up to C. So we take the distance from C, or 3 to C. I put it out on 3. We look for the difference here. And we're going to go from 3 to find C. Then we're going to go from C down to 2. So I take the distance I put it out on line 2, identify it as C to find 2. There's the difference that I'm seeing right there. And we go from C and scribe the arc. And we go from 2 up to find B, 2 to B, put it out on line 2, it's 2 to find B. I look for the difference. Again, very, very little here, almost a true length. And we're going to go from 2 and scribe the arc. Then we're going to go from B down to find 1. Take the foreshortened length. We're going to put it out on line 1. We're going to identify it as B to find 1. There's the difference that I see for B right here. And we go from B and scribe the arc. And now we're going to go from 1 up to A. We know it's not going to be a true length, as we do have an offset here. So 1 to A, I put it out here. I identify it as 1 to find A. There's the difference that we're seeing right there. We're going to take that distance and we're going to go from 1 and that completes that half of the pattern. So you can see that it's very repetitive. Once we get going, it's very repetitive through here. Having some type of method in order to identify when we go from bottom to top, top to bottom, as we're going through this sequence becomes very important so that we don't end up getting lost. And it's easy to get lost when we do that. You'll notice the second time around, I used my little arrows on here to help me distinguish between one side to the other. So give me a sec, I'll draw this in for you. And that's exactly what that's going to look like. Once we draw it in, we would add whatever seams and allowances we wanted to put on there in order to connect the collars to the body and as well as make the joint connections, and we'd be done. That shows you the advantage of using the Hyland Swing when we have this offset on here. It also shows you the importance of our numbers and our letters and following that sequence through so that we make sure that we're developing the correct true lengths as we work through this particular drawing. The one thing that's good to note is when you start to see patterns develop like this when we're doing our layout, as you will notice, they seem to follow a sequence as they go through in the development of our stretch out. And that's good to notice, because if all of a sudden you found that your sequence changed significantly, that it no longer looks the same, then it's probably a good chance you've made a mistake and you want to go back and check it to make sure that you've done it correct. So following those patterns that you see is very helpful when we're laying out these types of fittings. That completes this pattern. Thanks for watching.